Good afternoon. I would like to call the meeting of the Assembly Committee on Revenue to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assembly members Considine, De Silva, here. Flanagan, here. Gallant, Goulding, here. Gray, here. Hafen, here. Wynn, here. O'Neill, Roth, here. Chair Backus.
I am present. Secretary, please mark Vice Chair Considine absent excused, and also with respect to Assembly members Gallant and O'Neill, if they come present when they arrive. If not, they're absent excused as well. With that, I welcome everyone here in Carson City, as well as those in Las Vegas, as well as those who may be listening online this afternoon. Just before we get started, I would just, for housekeeping purposes, if you have any electronic devices, if you can mute those at this time. And if you are planning to provide testimony in person in Carson City or in Las Vegas, if you can obviously state your name clearly for the record, as well as sign in so we have that information, that would be great. It's even better if you can provide your business card to our secretary here in Carson City. For those that will be testifying online, please state and spell your name. That will provide great assistance. With that, we have two bills on our agenda. The first bill is Assembly Bill 62, which revises provisions relating to transferable tax credits for affordable housing. And our second bill is Assembly Bill 69, which removes the prospective expiration of the Nye County sales and use tax of 2007. Right now, it doesn't look like that we have that many people in person, but we will go ahead and hear the bills in order, with Assembly Bill 62 first and 69 to follow. And what we will do is we'll obviously take the presentation and then take testimony from those who wish to give pro, comment, as well as con and neutral. And we can allow people about 3 minutes each, depending on how many people we may have on the phone lines. We may have to limit that on the second bill. But with that, I will go ahead and open the hearing for Assembly Bill 62. I would ask the bill presenters to make their way to the table. Welcome, Division of Housing, to the committee, and please begin when you are ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus and members of the committee. For the record, Steve Acroth, that's S-T-E-V-E, last name Acroth, A-I-C-H-R-O-T-H. I'm the administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. With me today is Christine Hess, the Chief Financial Officer of the Nevada Housing Division. And we have the pleasure of presenting AB 62 on behalf of the Advisory Committee on Housing. I do want to emphasize that the Nevada Housing Division does provide support to the Advisory Committee. Normally we would have somebody from the Advisory Committee here today to present, but Senator Neal is the legislative appointee to the committee, and I think you guys will view her as absent excused, and we certainly hope her recovery is quick and as painless as possible. Anyway, so we're the Nevada Housing Division, and this is what we do. Down there in the lower left-hand corner, one of the bullet points that typically does not rise is what I mentioned, which was support the Advisory Committee on Housing. I'm going to do a little bit of history here about the Advisory Committee real quick, and provide some framework for why we're here. The Advisory Committee on Housing was formed in 2019, or reformed in 2019 via Assembly Bill 476, which was a bipartisan bill sponsored by Assemblyman Kramer, Assemblywoman Teresa Benitez-Thompson, and Sarah Peters. The important thing here from that committee is that they get to draft one BDR, and this is it. Previously, in the 2021 session, we had SB 12, which had to do with preservation, and coincidentally in 2023, also AB 62, which had to do with expanding the property tax exemption for affordable housing. So here at the 2025 session, we have AB 62. Basically, this is going to be an extension of the state tax credits for affordable housing. The affordable housing tax credits were created in 2019 via SB 448, and $40 million was appropriated in tax credit authority for the division. That went out in 2019, and when we get into exactly how it's been used here shortly, you'll see that we didn't do much in 2020 and 2021, mainly because of two reasons. The first being the COVID pandemic. We were all on furlough. We were not going to take hits against the general fund. And then secondly, we had some language cleanup, and basically that's what was cured via SB 284 in the 2021 session. So looking at AB 62 in its current form, there's basically two sections that are being modified. The first, Section 1, includes ground leases for the benefit of public housing authorities. So this was something that we missed as we established tax credits. It cannot apply to ground leases, which causes public housing authorities to be exempt from the potential use of the affordable housing tax credits. Secondly, it reduces the submission of the application for the tax credits to 15 days before closing. That's effectively done because as it stands now, it's 45 days. And 45 days is really too far out as we come to a financial close to really determine how these tax credits and if these tax credits are going to be used, because as the development is done closed financially, the numbers are constantly changing. It also concerns some of the transferability of credits in Section 1. Section 2 references the fiscal year component. It also asks this committee and those who will be voting on this bill to increase the available tax credits to $100 million from its current level of $40 million. So a $60 million increase, and then there's some dates cleaned up. So basically, very, very quickly, that is what the bill does. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Hess to talk about what's been done with the tax credits to date.
Thank you, Administrator Acroth, Chair Backus, and members of the committee. Christine Hess for the record. So on slide 5, you'll see a breakdown really of fiscal years and how we have approved tax credits. So I think what's important for this committee to know is statute does limit the amount of state tax credits we can provide to projects. So again, the role that state tax credits play is they provide gap financing in projects that have an affordability period of at least 30 years. And that financing they provide is actually in the form of equity. And we are limited by statute of approving $10 million in state tax credits. And we can, if we have any from previous years that were not allocated to the $10 million maximum, those can carry forward up to $13 million. So really right now, because when the program first got started, as Administrator Acroth said, we didn't obviously deploy state tax credits during COVID. Not only that, development was in a strange place, but we definitely are meeting our $13 million limit as we look forward in the years. So what you'll see there, fiscal year 22, none. That was also due to the cleanup language that was brought in fiscal year 20 and the 23 session. So that helped do that cleanup. But you'll see here going forward how we are now maxing out the state tax credits. So the pilot program has been effective. It is effective and continues to be effective. Currently in fiscal year 25, we have approved $9 million in state tax credits to date. And we have another Board of Finance meeting. So these state tax credits, I should also add, are paired with our low-income housing tax credit projects. And again, for this body, why that's important is there's a lot of compliance and eyes on these projects. These projects are successful, right? We have senior debt lenders with $30 million in these projects and tax credit investors that are making sure that the projects are successful. So So we have a Board of Finance meeting, and I already have one project that has a $7 million gap, right? So where are we going to find some of those? So I can tell you that $4 million in tax credits is likely going to go this fiscal year before the end. So to date, we've approved $19.725 million over 8 projects, and it's helped create of new construction 1,697 units. If you'll recall, the total amount appropriated in 2019 is $40 million. And again, projecting the additional fiscal year 25 that will expend that additional $4 million, our balance available at the end of this fiscal year will be $16.275 million. As the division forecasts out for program purposes, the gaps aren't getting any smaller. The developers are probably all here today to tell you that. So we're anticipating maxing out $13 million of our approval capacity in fiscal year 26, which midway through the biennium would mean this program would be exhausted of all of its funding opportunity. So the ask of the advisory committee does seem justified from a program continuation perspective. I also want to comment on the 15-day change from 45 days to 15 days and just talk about what that looks like. That date is a final application for state tax credits. Again, why that's important to this body is the state tax credits are the last dollars in, and projects must prove that they need these state tax credits in order to be financially feasible. So we are actually underwriting projects right before close in order to determine that they need the full amount that was originally requested and approved. In fact, last summer, we were able to identify with a developer, they had requested $3 million, and we were able to identify that they didn't need the full $3 million. And so we backed that state tax credit amount down to $1.7 million. So we are definitely moving through the process of the stewardship over these public funds, but just wanted to provide you that context there. I think I could provide you a lot of other information if you want, but I think at this point, I would turn it back to Administrator Acroth.
Thank you, Ms. Hess. Steve Acroth for the record. That wraps up our presentation. We're available for questions.
Thank you so much. Since we just finished up on slide 5, I do have a question regarding you had various fiscal years and different amounts. Can you clarify or confirm that these amounts are the credits that you're issuing by the fiscal year? Is that what it is? Or can you clarify what the dollars are?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chair Backus. Christine Hess for the record. So statute limits our approval of state tax credits. When the tax credits are actually claimed would be very difficult for us to track. So we have spoken actually with taxation. Again, for this body, we produce a report every October to describe our progress with state tax credits, but it's nearly impossible for us to know exactly when the projects are going to take them. We have a 4-year period that they're eligible to be claimed. I also do want to share that in the country, I speak on panels about our state tax credit program with other states that have them. And when I say we're getting, to date, 90 cents on the dollar, everybody is very jealous because they're getting about 60, 70 cents on the dollar for their state tax credits. And one of the reasons is per the nature of how we allow them to be deployed. So they can be taken immediately, for example, but there's just more flexibility and less strings attached for the tax credit investors. But that's my long answer, Chair, that I can track it after it's happened, but I can't track the actual taking of the credit.
I understand that. So I understand that yes, on the slide that you had with each of the dollar amounts for the fiscal year, that matches when the division is issuing the tax credits. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you. Next, I will go ahead and go to Assembly Member Roth.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. Kind of on that same thread, looking forward, does the division have an idea of how many projects people will be applying for their tax credits? Do we have an estimate there?
Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division, for the record. Basically, as Ms. Hess indicated, they come in for about $3 million, and we typically take a look at that, and if we can shrink that down, we will. But using that $3 million as a benchmark, and with the available balance once this all gets done of about $16 million, we're probably looking at 5 to 6 projects, typically going to create about 200 units of affordability per project.
Thank you. I will go to Assemblymember Golding.
Thank you, Chair. With the requested increase of 100 million, do you have an estimate of how long that 100 million would take to be exhausted?
Steve Acroth, for the record. So we're increasing from 40 million to 100 million, so the delta there is 60 million. So again, using the $3 million benchmark and the $10 million per year, we're looking at roughly 6 additional years and potentially probably about 15 to 20 projects.
Thank you so much. Next, we will go to Assemblymember Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here again. So I was reading that part of it on the transfer options that you mentioned in the bill. So the transfer option authorizing the project sponsor to transfer the transferable tax credit to a member or partner of the project sponsor or any other entity. How does that differ from the current law right now?
Thank you, Assemblyman. This is Christine Hess for the record. This, I think, just provides more clarity for the developers that are accessing the program and provides some cleanup language to how we are, the requirements that the division has around the transfer. The original, when the state tax credit was originally introduced in 2019, it was very important that this was not commoditized and not just transferred around. So this language here helps strengthen that.
Just quick clarity, Chair. So as it stands, even without this verbiage, they can still do it?
Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division, for the record. Yes, that was one of the things that got cleaned up in 2021 session. But I think this just reinforces this and makes it better. What we see is, ultimately these might be purchased by a large bank, large financial institution. And they may say, hey, we want this tax credit to be applied to this part of our financial institution. And so it allows the ability to transfer within that institution, if you will.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, does anyone else have any other questions? Here, let me kind of throw in some. I know that the division received about $500 million of ARPA money for affordable housing projects in Nevada. And I also have the pleasure of sitting on our money committee, and I get to, and the IFC, to see your guys' presentation each week. But for the purposes of this hearing, when does the division expect that the $500 million will be fully expended?
Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. Certainly we have the expenditure date of December 31st, 2026. We anticipate that they will all be spent out by that date, if not before, in most cases, specifically for multifamily development. I will add, in response to your question, we used a lot of that funding for gap funding in these projects. So we didn't need to use state tax credits for a number of those projects. And now there will be more pressure because that funding is basically obligated and is now being expended. And so as projects come to the fore, we're going to need additional gap funding, and that's one of these. This tax credit is one of those sources. So we anticipate additional pressures being put on this tax credit program.
And for the privilege of the other members that may not sit on IFC, do you want to share about approximately how many projects and how many units that will be of affordable housing that will be for Nevadans?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Christine Hess for the record. So the $500 million, we've spent approximately 38%, or just shy of $200 million, actually out the door reimbursing these projects. There's in total, in the multifamily space, we have new construction and projects that are rehabilitation or renovation projects that are multifamily. And then we also have home ownership projects in which we do support our subrecipients who are providing critical home repairs and weatherization. And we also, ourselves and our other partner who's here today, Rural Housing, and another rural partner provided down payment assistance. And we also supported some land purchases that ultimately will be used for affordable housing. So we have supported about 50 projects. Not having it in front of me, and lots of numbers through our head a lot, but I'm going to give you my back of the napkin, and I know I'll be really close, and if you want exact chair or committee members, happy to provide that. About 50 projects and approximately 3,400 units supported, not all new, right? Some of them rehabbed, which is also very important because we could lose those to the market if we don't maintain a 30-year affordability restriction. And then additionally, we have multiple households that benefited from the down payment assistance. Our program alone of $7.5 million supported 500 new homeowners to be able to afford their first homes.
Thank you. I do have a couple other questions. I'll go to Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. My question is, what is the timeline difference between the notification date and the actual issuance date? And how does this potentially extend the lifespan of this program, given that the credits can carry forward?
Steve Acroth, for the record. I'll try to answer that as best I can. The only thing that's being changed in here from a timeline standpoint is that 45 to 15 day where we can do a little deeper dive on the pro formas that are provided to us and make sure that the project actually needs this. So when you heard 4 years, they can take the credit, that's not changing. One of the things that happened when the bill was first passed, it was envisioned as $40 million a year for 4 years. And so in 2019, it did have a sunset date of 2023. Well, that was one of the things that was changed in 2021 because we had delayed the deployment of these funds because of COVID. And so there is no sunset date on the 40 million, and we have not accounted for a sunset date on this additional 60 million.
Thank you, and I'll circle back to Assemblymember Golding.
Thank you, Chair. I was delighted to hear that you used some of that $500 million on weatherization, and I'm wondering if you could expand on that a little bit. Do all of the projects include an energy efficiency and weatherization sensitivity?
Thank you, Assemblymember, for the question. Christine Hess for the record. I could phone a friend if he would like to speak, as we have a subrecipient who has directly provided, we've provided the funding to do the weatherization. The housing division ourselves, we don't actually reach Nevadans directly. We go through our nonprofit and housing authority partners.
Good afternoon, Bill Brewer. I'm the Executive Director for Nevada Rural Housing Authority. We did obtain some Home Means Nevada funding to help with energy efficiency purposes. I couldn't tell you exactly how many households we've assisted. I didn't come prepared with that information, but a number of households in the counties and areas that we serve in rural Nevada and in northern Clark County. Those, of course, all had that affordable, energy-efficient component to them. Beyond that, there are other uses of the program that we're doing on multifamily housing as well, and those have energy-efficient components included from the other funding sources, and so they will all be very energy-efficient properties.
Great to hear. So on the other multifamily projects, is it is weatherization or efficiency incorporated into all of them? It seems like a critical component.
Thank you, Assemblymember Christine Hess, for the record. And also happy for the Home Means Nevada 500 million. If you'd like any numbers on weatherization and households helped, we can follow up with that. We all have many numbers running through our heads. Yes, so I have here, just in case you had any questions that might be in here, our qualified allocation plan. In the qualified allocation plan, projects are required to meet certain energy guidelines. So that is something that we workshop typically annually and get feedback and have consultants support around, and that's in our qualified allocation plan, along with the criteria of eligibility for our state tax credits. I'd be happy also to follow up and provide that copy if that's of interest. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and I know Senator Neal would have been impressed with your ability to answer all our questions, but at this time, I don't believe we have any other questions from our committee members, and so we will go ahead and move to support testimony of Assembly Bill 62. So anyone in Carson City wishing to give a support testimony, please come to the dais and feel free to start when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Bill Brewer, Executive Director for Nevada Rural Housing Authority. We are pleased to be here in support of this bill. Nevada Rural Housing has not used the state tax credit in our development efforts, but we are aware of a number of other entities that have, and we certainly can foresee the day when we would be coming to the division for some of that assistance. We're very grateful for the state making this important step forward to support affordable housing in Nevada. Thank you.
Nick Ciccone, City of Reno Government Affairs Manager. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. The City of Reno does not have all the tools that it could possibly have in its toolbox to support all of the affordable housing that we need for our community, and we appreciate the state's continuation and extension of this program. Thank you so much. Nick Ciccone, Ciccone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Mindy Elliott, MENDYELLIOTT with Flynn Judici Government Affairs, here today representing the Reno Housing Authority as well as the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. Back in 2019, when these original tax credits were envisioned and strategized, we had hoped that we would achieve exactly what we have achieved. $40 million, that's $11,623 per unit that the state is investing to make sure that people have a roof over their heads. And I think from the standpoint of the lasagna, which we like to call it in the capital stack, these funds are last in. And the division has done a tremendous job as it relates to really being good fiduciary monitors of how these funds are invested. And I think from the standpoint of the difference that these tax credits are making today and certainly in the future, are making a difference in the lives of not only the developers, but the investment in the people that are the beneficiaries of the end result. So we strongly support this strategy. We need a lot of tools in our toolbox to be successful, but we thank you for hearing this bill. We thank the committee for putting the bill forward, and we thank all the partners for making this actual a reality. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of this committee. My name is Catherine Nielsen. I'm the Executive Director for the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. As you guys are probably pretty aware, that individuals with disabilities are also facing the crisis of being able to find affordable, accessible housing in our state. And so one of our policy recommendations this year was to ensure that there is increased funding and guarantee for that quality, safe, affordable, and accessible housing. So we're excited to see this bill come forward and offer our support. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. For the sake of brevity, I'll go ahead and echo the comments of my colleagues that have been testifying in support. We particularly appreciate the expansion of this program, both in funding as well as in scope, to help capture those public housing authorities. We believe these changes will promote the development of more attainable housing within Nevada for all of our Nevadans. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus, members of the committee. Joanna Jacob on behalf of Clark County, and really wanted to state our support for this bill. The tax credits have been an important benefit to many of our developers and will help us. The partnership we've had with the state, especially on our community housing fund, where we are putting money in to develop affordable, permanent supportive housing, senior housing, and other multifamily units. This does create a critical gap financing model that will help sustain and to grow our investment in affordable housing. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus, members of the committee. For the record, Cadence Matijevich, Cadence representing Washoe County, here to add Washoe County's voice to the chorus of support for this bill for the reasons that you've heard, particularly from Ms. Jacob from Clark County and Mr. Ciccone from the City of Reno. As local governments, we are looking for as many tools as we can have in our communities, and we think that this is an important one. We appreciate the additional funding and the extension. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus, members of the committee. My name is Randy Robison, Director of Government Affairs for the City of Las Vegas. I'll echo the comments of Ms. Matijevich, although I won't try to spell her name. And I've also been authorized by the Director of Government Affairs for the City of North Las Vegas to indicate their support as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, we will go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 62? Okay, with that, AVH, we'll go to the phone lines. Is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 62 this evening?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 62, please press star 9 or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue.
Hi, my name is Eric Sorensen, spelled Eriksorsensen. I'm the Director of Finance for Affordable Housing Innovation. We are one of the recipients of state tax credits in 2024, and those credits are actually going to help us construct a 190-unit affordable project right now. I wanted to read a statement on behalf of Ovation. Ovation enthusiastically supports Assembly Bill 62. As you may know, none of the recent affordable housing developments would have been possible without significant federal, state, and local funding to cover gaps caused by increases in cost, interest rates, and operating expenses. Most of these funds come from state, Home Means Nevada, and local funds, such as Clark County Community Housing Funds. These were one-time funds and will soon be exhausted. The state tax credit program is now one of the state's major tools to facilitate affordable housing development. The BDR corrects some technical issues that have arisen in deals that have used the credits, but more importantly, it requests an increase to $100 million from $40 million to allow for a longer-term sustainable funding stream. This important gap financing leverages low-income housing tax credits and other private and public funds. We believe that it is critical to get this bill passed. Thank you.
AVH, are there any other call?
If you have just joined and would like to provide support testimony for AB 62, please press star 9 or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Matthew Wilkie. For the record, Matthew Wilkie, just calling in support. Thank you.
Chair, there are no more callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we'll go back to Las Vegas. I don't think I allowed those down there fast enough time to get to the podium. So I believe you're probably up there wanting to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 62. So feel free to turn on your mic when you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Maurice Page, excuse me, Chair Buckus and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Maurice Page, Maurice Page, and I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Housing Coalition. And I want to thank the Advisory Committee on Housing for sponsoring Assembly Bill 62 and for your willingness to consider this important legislation. We all know that across our state, hardworking families, seniors, and essential workers are struggling to find stable and affordable homes, and the challenges of land availability, rising construction costs, and the lack of financing options have made it increasingly difficult to build the housing we so desperately need. AB 62 is a necessary step forward to ensure that we maximize every available tool in the toolbox to address this crisis. This program is one of a few state-level incentives that Nevada has to support for the development of affordable housing. Investing in affordable housing is investing in Nevada's economic growth, workforce stability, and quality of life. By strengthening our tax credit program, AB 62 will leverage public-private partnerships, attract additional investment, and help create the housing supply that Nevada needs to support our communities and economy. So on behalf of the Nevada Housing Coalition, I thank you for your time, and I appreciate all that you do.
Hello, this is Audra Hamernick, Hamernik. I'm the president of Nevada Hand, and we are a nonprofit affordable housing developer here in Nevada. We are here to add our support to AB 62. State tax credits are an important financial resource for the Nevada Housing Division to use to support the development, construction, improvement, expansion, and rehabilitation of affordable housing. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you so much. We will next move to those in opposition of Assembly Bill 62. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 62? Okay. I will go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 62? And go ahead and turn on your mic when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Cyrus Hojjati, Cyrus Hojjaty. I am the team leader of the Las Vegas chapter of Strong Towns, urban planning organization. I'm concerned about these tax credits because the costs and liabilities will likely fall into taxpayers. I do think that sometimes government intervention can help in issues of affordable housing. We like to thank the sponsor for addressing this issue. This is a significant concern. Rents in my apartment building are actually going down, believe it or not. But we don't think this is really the way to do it. And we don't think that this really solves the underlying problems we have in housing. Remember, throughout the 20th century until the late 90s, housing was relatively affordable. It was affordable after the financial crisis, but since then we've changed the policy on federal lands, financial regulations. The other thing that concerns me about this bill is that when they're trying to build projects, why aren't there any exemptions, as far as I know, regarding codes, such as zoning, parking requirements? When you look at zoning, like, are they allowed to build plenty of micro apartments or tiny houses. Are they exempt from policies? We just had a bill on biking. Is there something regarding alternative forms of transportation? Because they're both aspects that impact affordability. So I don't really think this is the best way to do it. Maybe if they can make some changes, that would be great. But other than that, thank you so much.
Thank you. AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 62?
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 62, please press star 9 on your phone or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. We will finally move to those that are in neutral. Is there anyone here in Carson City who would like to testify in the neutral to Assembly Bill 62? Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to offer testimony as a neutral?
Thank you, Chairman Bacchus. And everybody on the assembled Revenue Committee, I appreciate you the opportunity. And I want to thank you again for this facility you made available. I'm trying to set my timer here for 1:59. I've been a real estate agent since 1981, excuse me, 1982. And it's a constant problem when somebody has the ability to afford a payment, they get a good job, credit's good, but they don't have the down payment. So I was really gratified to hear the testimony that there was 500 families that received assistance. I would like to know if it's possible sometime, and I'll try to find this out directly from the very fine people you have working there, if that was a number, say, in the 15,000 range or something, because if that's the case, which is about what it takes to buy an affordable house here in $300,000 to $400,000 range, down payment using FHA financing, that would mean somewhere around $7 or $8 million went from the funds to that particular component. People who own houses end up paying property taxes, and that'll generate tax base. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with the type of housing. So I guess a big question I have is homeownership for those who are buying maybe a moderating priced house, new construction or whatever, and are getting their down payment from this program because they don't have parents. We were able to help our children out, but they don't have parents. Are there people who can look at maybe expanding that program? And that would be the most important thing, I think, for actually building equity. Because really equity, if you're in a low-income housing, you're not building equity. And every month you're paying rent, even if it's low, you're not generating equity in your own property. And that's the basis so much. So I guess my testimony in the neutral is just, I would see hopefully more effort towards providing opportunity for young families, people who are definitely working hard, trying to raise their families to get the help of that.
You're not getting cut off. You're not getting cut off. If you don't mind just stating your name for the record.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll get better at this. Thank you, Assemblyman.
Okay.
My name is Chris Burris, spelled Boeres. I live here in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And then also, Mr. Burris, I appreciate your testimony, but any suggestions regarding changes to the bill would actually be
if anything that
opposition.
could be expanded. If I'm the authority to talk over you, please forgive me. I'm a terrible New Yorker habit of doing that. If that actual number could be increased and an additional amount could go toward assisting people with their down payment. I hate to take money away from these very wonderful programs, and there's so much need in this town for what you're talking about. But affordable housing is more than just a building places where people will live for the rest of their lives and never build any equity. So the more you can contribute in some way, shape, or form to families getting started out and owning their own real estate, that would be it's such an impact on their lives and their children's lives.
Thank you so much, sir. We will now go to AVH. Is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give neutral testimony to Assembly Bill 62 this evening?
To testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 62, please press star 9 on your phone or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, would our presenters like to come back up and do any closing remarks? You don't have to. You don't feel.
Steve Acroth, Nevada Housing Division Administrator. Just on behalf of the Advisory Committee on Housing, we appreciate your attention to this bill. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much. At this time, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 62. And I will go ahead and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 69. I believe our presenters are in Las Vegas, so please come forward and begin whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Mark Fiorentino from Kemper Crow. We represent Nye County. I want to take a second to thank you for hearing this bill this afternoon. It's obviously a very important issue for Nye County and their citizens and their first responders. So I'm going to take a minute and introduce the panels. Not everybody is going to speak unless you have questions. So here in Carson City with me to my left is Chief Scott Lewis. To my right is Lorena Dillinger, who is Assistant County Manager. In Las Vegas, I believe we have Chairman Ron Boscovich of the County Commission. I think we also have Commissioner Ian Bain, the County Manager Brett Wagner, the County Comptroller Helen Bay, and Sheriff Joseph McGill. So with your permission, Madam Chair, here's how we're would like to proceed. If this is okay with you, is I'll start, walk through the bill. It's pretty simple. That'll only take a minute or so. We know we submitted through Nellis a brief summary of the revenue that has been received under this tax so far and a summary of how the money is spent. So we probably won't, I'll highlight that, but won't spend much time on that. Then I think Chief Lewis would like to address you briefly and put a little bit more meat on the bones in terms of why this is important to him. And then I believe Sheriff McGill will probably do the same from Las Vegas. And then we'll be prepared to answer any questions that you have. So the bill is pretty simple. In 2007, the legislature authorized the Nye County Commission to impose a sales tax to pay for police and fire services. That authorization, the county utilized and approved an ordinance, I believe, roughly 2014, 2015, so they have about 10 years of history of collecting the tax. The bill, when it was adopted, had a sunset provision, so if you take no action, their authority to collect the tax and use it for police and fire services will expire in 2027. That's all the bill does, is remove the expiration date. It doesn't create any new taxes. It doesn't increase any existing taxes. It just removes the expiration date so they can continue to collect and utilize the tax. I said I would take a second. The document we gave you looks a little bit like this. Not a little bit like this. It looks like that. So you can take the time to address that separately if you want. I'll just highlight it for you. So we've gotten to the point where the tax is generating a little less than $5 million a year for Nye County. And it's used for a variety of purposes, include to support the salaries and benefits for the officers and the firefighters. It's used for equipment. It's used for supplies. It's used for really to support every aspect of the first responders' jobs in Nye County. So with that, if you don't have any questions for me, we'll let, I know the chief wants to give you a little bit more detail.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Lewis. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Nye County and also the Town of Pahrump Fire Chief. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. This public safety sales tax has been an absolute public safety game changer for Nye County. With a rural and frontier footprint of approximately 18,000 square miles outside of our population center of Pahrump, the majority of the county is served by volunteers who have little to no budgets. And this public safety sales tax is one of the primary means of them acquiring equipment, volunteer retention, and also volunteer training. In the population center, we've been able to hire staff that we normally wouldn't have been able to hire. Should this sunset go into effect, we would lose those positions that are currently funded by the public safety sales tax. As we talk about the reasons for this tax and the benefits from it, it is probably the most important component of what we have available to us to help us do our jobs. You may recall recently in rural Nevada, Nye County, two semi-trucks collided, resulting in a lithium-ion battery fire. Public safety sales tax monies had the necessary responders riding appropriate equipment and utilizing appropriate apparatus on that scene, resulted in that Highway 95 being reopened in hours and not days. It also supports our communications programs, including our IT initiatives. We now have ability to communicate with our mutual aid partners, not only in our state, but our neighboring states. We have the ability now to have the appropriate equipment and capital and meet Homeland Security initiatives. That includes security and surveillance on our properties. And most important, we're better prepared to provide the necessary PPE for our emergency responders across the county. We are also looking to foster and improve on some of those PPE that is used to make sure that it's safe for cancer initiatives, things like that. And just in summary, because I know we're on a time constraint, our citizens, each and every citizen in Nye County benefits from this sales tax. They support it on the annual basis when we present our expenditures in public forum. And I will tell you that when someone in Nye County calls 911, their expectations are that somebody will arrive in a timely fashion, riding the appropriate equipment, having the necessary tools and training, and the sufficient numbers of personnel to complete the task. And that's what this has done. And I ask for your support, because without it, we will be taking multiple steps backwards. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I imagine Sheriff McGill has a few words.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I'm Sheriff Joe McGill, MCGILL, the elected sheriff of Nye County. I can tell you that this public safety sales tax revenue is absolutely crucial to everything that we do. If it weren't for this revenue, we would have 15 less individuals working in our department, because those 15 individuals are paid and funded through the public safety sales tax. Several years ago, the state legislature created an unfunded mandate requiring that all law enforcement in the state of Nevada wear digital body cams, for lack of a better term. Our original purchase of that did not have the money in our budget, in the agency's budget. My predecessor took the public safety sales tax revenue, made that purchase, and was able to immediately comply with the law based on the deadline and purchase those body cams for all deputies that were in the county. At 5-year mark, those body cams were out of service contract, which was last year. Again, we did not have the money. We were able to, again, tap into the public safety sales tax to fund that purchase. And I'm glad to say that we did have a $2.2 million purchase that was funded through this. As Chief Lewis said, the town boards and the county commissioners regularly every year support whatever purchases and expenditures that we have from this fund. And if I had my choice, I would like to double it. Just for a couple of numbers, for the record, in 2022, we got close to 60,000 calls for service. 2023, 76,000 calls for service. And in 2024, about 72,000 calls for service. You can see that that's fluctuating up and down based on those 3-year average. But there is no question that our existence and our equipment is an absolute necessity. It helps us to pay for things that we would not otherwise be able to afford for the protection of our community. So I would plead with you to support this movement and to allow the legislature to continue this revenue stream so that we can depend on it. Thank you.
I think that concludes our set presentation, Madam Chair.
Okay.
But we're ready to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll go to committee members that may have any questions, and we'll go ahead and start with Assemblymember Golding.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if you could paint a picture for us that would demonstrate for the committee and anyone else that's listening what the consequence would be of losing this funding. You talked about 15 positions.
No,
and
she's
you talked
looking
about,
at you. That's a good one for
I
you
was
to
just
answer.
making sure, yes.
Yeah, you talked about, so there had been reference to 15 positions and the number of calls, but a concrete picture of the absence of this funding.
Yes, thank you for your question. Scott Lewis, Fire Chief, Town of Pahrump. I will speak just of the Pahrump right now. The Pahrump would lose approximately 18 staff members that are currently funded by PSST. We would also have the inability to support current reoccurring costs under IT initiatives and communications, which are paramount to everything that we do. Historically, we've had to, and it just may appear strange, but hold our portables in the air trying to catch the ability to talk to dispatch or other resources in basements and other fortified structures that have any ability to communicate. But we still have ongoing occurring costs that are associated with the radio type and frequencies that we use. We would also have the inability to purchase equipment and apparatus. We would be going back to the days where we were buying used equipment that wasn't initially designed for our use. Where we work in a harsh environment. We have superheated temperatures in the summer. Most apparatus coming from other areas of the country aren't designed for that type of application. So our PPE, which is our personal protective equipment, the inability to support the programs for ongoing replacement and upgrades so that our firefighters are safe, and including our self-contained breathing apparatus, which is paramount to everything that we do in a hazardous environment. So the consequences on the fire and EMS side, and that's across the county, that's not just specifically Pahrump. The only thing the difference is that they'd probably be unable to support the volunteer acquisition and retention that's required by not having the necessary equipment for them. And so therefore, most of the time, the volunteers will not support a system in which they don't feel protected.
Thank you for giving us an idea of what will happen.
Thank you.
And I didn't know if Sheriff McGill kind of wanted to chime in on that as well.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Chair. Sheriff Joe McGill. It's really very hard to say what would the negative consequences be, because oftentimes we may not know of a need for a particular item or expenditure until it may suddenly come up. As a matter of fact, just today, I was talking with detectives. We have, you've seen on the side of the road, usually on fatal crashes, Highway Patrol using these digital scanners that are taking hundreds of color photos in nanoseconds, and you're digitally representing a crime scene in a way that used to be done on pen and paper. Our machines are terribly out of date, and they are 6 years old. We would like to upgrade that equipment. Each scanner and we have 3 in our agency. Each scanner is $49,000 each. That includes the software and the equipment to operate it and set it up. Without this PSST, we would not be able to make that purchase. Again, we have 15 people who are paid under the PSST, so we would lose those individuals. We do not have the staff to support that loss, and unfortunately, our county does not have the budget to support keeping those people. So oftentimes it's hard to say, like I said, what the expenditures might be or when they might come up. But any large expenditure that is not projected in the budget, this is where we go to if we are able to, under the confines of the requirements of the law of the PSST. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. Next, we will go to Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. The bill was passed, the law was passed back in 2007. So you've known I guess probably the city man or county manager, excuse me, you may be the best to answer this. You've known and been able to prepare for this, the ending of this bill and revenue source for some time. What other avenues have you taken to knowing that, let me back up if I may. Have you, what's the polling on your population of Nye County concerning the extenuation or extending this tax? Have you done any of that?
Assemblyman, I'll try that first, and then I know that, again, there may be others that can answer this question. I don't think we've done any specific polling on, we were talking before we got here, the chief, I was asking him that very specific question, and he said that they have so far enjoyed great support from Nye County constituents on the work that they're doing, and of course that budget has to be approved every year, so they have to kind of resell themselves in what they're doing every year. One of the reasons you have 2 of the commissioners in the office and in the audience is to demonstrate their support for this tax as well, and their willingness to continue to work with their constituents and with the legislature to implement it in a way that continues to make sense. But as far as I know, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they've done any polling per se.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you mind stating your name for the record?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm Mark Fiorentino. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair, may I follow up? I look at polling as the various emails that I get from constituents about the various issues that we have. But let me ask, if I may, my other question is, have you made any contingency plans that in case this tax is not extended over the last 17 years for it? Has there been any discussion about what, besides cutting, what other things can be done, what other taxes, revenues can be addressed?
Yeah, I'll try, but anybody can step in. So I think the answer to that question is nothing specific. Somebody again can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think $5 million represents approximately 10% of the entire county budget. So to lose that funding would mean you'd either have to do what the chief and the sheriff have said, or you're going to have to cut other services to fill that hole. So part of the one thing I guess we have done in terms of a contingency plan, although you may not define it as a contingency plan, is we're here one session early before it expires, because obviously we have to start making commitments today based on whether we have that revenue or not.
And of course, Mr. Fiorentino, you have to put your name for the record before you speak.
I forgot again? Okay, I'm Mark Fiorentino. You want to go ahead? Chief, go ahead.
Thank you for your question. This is Scott Lewis, LEWIS, Director of Emergency Management and Fire Chief. One of the things I'd like you to consider is there's a difference between a county budget and the town budgets. And the fire departments are under the towns, and that's what the PSST supports. So in most of the rural and frontier towns, there is no other monies. There's no contingencies because there certainly isn't, it just isn't the availability of additional funding. And that's pertinent to the town of Pahrump as well. We're all unincorporated. And so while the county is the actual town board, for most, not all the communities, there just simply isn't many options available. I hope that helps. Thank you.
That helps
Chair,
tremendously.
can I chime in if I may?
You absolutely could, but as long as you restate your name for the record before you start.
Absolutely. Sheriff Joe McGill. I've got some insight or whatever you may call it in reference to this question. I've been the sheriff of Nye County for 2 years. Obviously, Chief Lewis has been there for, I think, 72 years, somewhere around there. Every time that a new tax comes up, and everybody sitting beside me and behind me can attest to this, we recently proposed a new tax on a fuel so that we could improve our roads, because our community screams and cries and rants and raves about how bad our roads are. But when that tax was proposed, it was horribly shot down. Every time that myself and Chief Lewis go in front of the county commission and ask for anything, I think he would support my statement in saying that the community members are pitchforks and torches in favor of us and behind us. So polling, it's not official, but I think that, number one, this is a tax that is continuing, not beginning. And our community is a very poor community for the most part. So I think that takes a lot of the sting out of it, is the fact that it's a continuing tax rather than a new tax. And I think that the community would be in favor of it, based on the fact that they are so in favor of everything that we do.
Thank you. And if I'm sorry, sir, if I must offer on top of that, Scott Lewis, LAWIS. One other thing too is we are completely transparent when we offer our PSST spending plans. It's not just a listed dollar value. It's item specific, and it gives the value and what any recurring costs are associated with it. And we have been met with great success on that approach with our citizens. I don't think there's ever been a time where they've actually stated a negative on our use of the PSST across the county. Thank you.
Chief, Sheriff, I really appreciate your comments. I truly do. They enlighten me greatly, and thank you very much for it.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Assemblymember Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is going to kind of tie in with Assemblyman O'Neill's question. Having been a former county commissioner, I'm actually very adverse to taxes. It's a little unique. It's a continuation. But have you guys haven't done like a non-binding ballot question and some way to sell it to the public, just so you know you have hard numbers going in? And, you know, would your county commission be willing to do something like that before they enacted the tax?
Madam Chair, Mark Fiorentino for the record. It's funny because before we came up, I kept reminding them, make sure you restate your name, make sure you restate your name. Assemblyman, again, a good question. We have not put a question to the voters at all. Again, the way the statute was originally set up, I think was wise, and I think it's worked well from what you've heard so far anyway, that it required the county commissioners to actually adopt the ordinance, so they're the closest to their constituents about what they will support and what they won't support. So we're certainly open-minded to try to address that if you're looking for the county commission to reaffirm their commitment to the tax, and probably the best way to approach that would be to look at the way that the statute was originally written and require the county commission to consider it again and readopt it. We're certainly open-minded to that if that makes you feel more comfortable.
Madam Chair, follow on. So And I'm not trying to, I mean, it's something I support, trust me, having done a couple of these in Lyon County. But you've talked about, how much the community supports, but I'm looking at the room there, and there's not many people there willing, ready to testify in support of this. Did anybody think to reach out to community and have them come out and testify in support?
Go ahead, Jim.
Scott Lewis, LEWS. I would say this to you, sir, is that I think it's a great sign that they're not there in opposition. I think that's the message, because clearly our constituents and our citizens are not quiet, and they will voice their opinions loudly and proudly, and by them not showing opposition is support. It's all a matter of perception. And I can just tell you firsthand, when we're up there and we're relaying our information to the public, it's affirming as to the service level that their expectations are and what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Chief and Sheriff, and thank you guys for the job you do.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Hafen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to say thank you to the Fire Chief, Sheriff, staff, the commissioners that are here. I know the job that you guys do is very difficult, and I am very, very grateful for all that you have done for our community. I think you're underselling some of the importance when you mention that it's 10% of the budget. And so, which leads me to my question, and I want you to just help me here, because some of the communities, my understanding, they only have maybe one sheriff deputy or maybe one fire EMS. And if I understood you correctly, Fire Chief, there would be 18 positions that would be lost. And so would that mean that some of these communities would potentially lose their one either sheriff deputy or fire EMS?
Scott Lewis, LEWIS. Yes, so the 18 is just specifically for the population center of Pahrump. So you can imagine the adverse impact that would pose, as we're due about 10,000 responses annually just out of town of Pahrump. The downfall on the volunteers side from the remainder of Nye County is that they will no longer be able to provide the necessary support through the acquisition of equipment and volunteer retention and training, things like that will actually help them serve their communities and be safe while doing it. So there's a ripple effect that will ultimately be experienced through the potential cessation of the PSST that can't be made up in any other way.
Thank you. And then just one follow-up, Madam Chair. And this goes to Assemblymember Gray's question. If I remember correctly, when Nye County Commission voted to use this as their one BDR, that vote was unanimous. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Mark Fiorentino. Yes, sir, it was.
Thank you so much. With that, I'll go to Assemblymember Roth.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and all you do to keep our rural communities safe. My question is in regards to, what is the intent behind setting this specific percentage permanently versus extending the deadline?
Madam Chair, Mark Fiorentino, I'm not sure I understood the question, because all the bill does is extend the deadline. So the rate is set, it can't be changed, absent you making other changes to the statute that we're not proposing. So the rate is what it is. And all this bill does is make sure that their authority to, that their ordinance doesn't expire because the statute reached its expiration date. I'm not sure, maybe I didn't understand your question.
I guess to clarify, if there is no expiration date, wouldn't that follow that it is permanent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Under the current version of the bill, that's correct. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't understand your question.
Yes,
That's correct.
and then therefore, if by making it permanent, what is the thought process in doing that versus actually extending another deadline to come back and setting that specific percentage permanently?
So if we propose no amendments to the bill, and the legislature adopts it as is, it would become permanent. We would not need to come back. If that is concerning to you, again, we're open-minded to replacing just ending the expiration date with just extending it. So we can follow up with you all on that, and we're open-minded to doing it if that's important.
I don't really have an opinion, but I'm more curious as to like what that thought process is and what's the intent in making it permanent. Does it just go to the need, the obvious need, right? I mean, I know that the question may seem kind of obvious, but if we could get that on the record.
I will reaffirm on the record that that is the intent to making it permanent, is to be able to rely on this funding to continue to provide the services. And that if you don't make it permanent, there is, again, some risk at some point. Let's say you extended 5 years, you extended 10 years, you have that same risk that we're going to run into the same trouble, that we wouldn't be able to replace the revenue elsewhere, and we would have to reduce the services.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ferrantino. We do have one quick follow-up question by Assemblymember Gray.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. This is to you, Chief, and the Sheriff. I just want to clarify and get it on the record. So the positions you guys will lose, are those actually firefighters and sworn deputies?
Scott Lewis, LEWIS. They're career firefighter and EMS. They're cross-trained personnel between advanced EMTs and paramedics. No administrative staff in there. There's one part-time IT, but that's for the fire service operations that I discussed earlier. Thank you.
And then,
yes, Sheriff Joe McGill, in response to that, our loss would fall into both categories. It would be deputies and civilian employees. To give you the exact number of which, I don't have that at my disposal at the moment, but we would lose deputies and civilian employees.
thank you for that. We will go to Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. It's kind of along the lines of Assemblymember Roth's question, and maybe some of everyone else's, but if this is permanent, or if this is funding staff you have now, and we're seeing growth, a lot of growth, especially in Pahrump, in terms of populations, how do you see, if the amount is creeping up a little bit, it's gotten a little higher in your presentation each year, but not exponentially, how do you see that playing into you managing your growth needs to provide adequate public safety?
Let me start, Chief, and then you can add in. Madam Chair, Mark Fiorentino. So because it's a sales tax, we're, at least in theory, as the population grows and people buy more goods and more services, we would expect the total revenue from the sales tax to grow along with it. I think you've seen I think the chart actually probably shows that. If you kind of overlaid it with some recent growth in Pahrump in particular, you would see that growth. So again, that would be the main component of allowing them to utilize the tax to help fund the growth. But there's no other provision in here to allow them to increase the rate of the tax. So that's primarily what they would rely on.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much. And thank you, is someone else chiming in?
Yes, Helen Bay, Comptroller for Nye County. I just wanted to add that when we look at our general fund operating, public safety represents 30% of our budget annually. However, we have not seen the growth expected for our sales tax, which is about 22 million year over year. And our property tax has risen a little bit with the population. However, it has not really addressed the needs of the general fund. And then add to the 4 million in payments in lieu of taxes, that adds up to 44 million. However, our annual operating budget is 54 million. So the math is not adding up, we do have a shortfall, and we do expect to experience that shortfall given the economic conditions that we're facing. We have relied heavily in the past years with CARES funding and grants, and this is how we've been able to sort of patch the gap that we're experiencing. However, as you know, grants are not a permanent source or a stable source of revenue, and it has become a challenge. Add to that, we used to have millions of mining revenue, and that has pretty much gone away down to, for several million, down to 500,000 this past year. So we're facing the challenge of a budgetary shortfall in our general fund. So it's more important than ever to preserve this sales tax, which will not really grow. If you're concerned about the sales tax actually increasing, it's actually in pace with our sales tax, which has remained pretty stagnant year over year for the past 3 or 4 years. So when we're trying to plan for our capital improvement, we do rely on the PSST dollars to fund that gap that we're experiencing that is widening year over year. We have debt to pay, and as far as being conservative and being frugal, we are practicing that. We have not incurred any additional debt, and we are very careful about planning our capital purchases and making sure that we have some contingency or a fund balance in these PSST funds, so that if we do experience, for the time being, some reduced revenues, which may happen this year or in the coming years, that we can sort of deal with that. However, it is very concerning from a normal operating position to imagine not having this buffer that we have come to rely on, especially with the rising costs. We've had some supply chain disruptions that have cost us because now things that we have ordered 2 to 3 years ago during COVID are now being delivered, but the price has gone up 3 to 4 times. We also compete for labor rates. It's very competitive to recruit and retain law enforcement and public safety first responders. We're only 40 miles away from Las Vegas, so we compete with that pay, and we don't have the revenue to really keep up with that. And we just went through some collective bargaining negotiations, and we've had to settle for 18 to 24% more in salaries and benefits just to keep competitiveness. And so when we factor all of these things in, the $5 million expected out of public safety sales tax will be used, and will be used well, in order to maintain the services for this county. Thank you.
Okay, I was almost about to end it. We have one quick question from Assembly Member O'Neill.
Let's pray it's quick. To your comptroller or treasurer, I forget what her title was, I apologize. You get payment in lieu of from the feds. How much is that, and what percentage of your overall budget is that? If you have it handy.
Yes, this past year, we, Helen Bay, BAE, Comptroller for Nye County, it has been $4 million, and it stays pretty much the same year over year. And that is from a $54 million budget, that revenue is less than 10%. So it's not too much. So we don't really rely on that.
Thank you so much for that. With that, I appreciate all of your responsiveness. And we will go ahead and move to taking testimony and support, opposition, and neutral testimony this evening. So with that, we'll go ahead and start here in Carson City. So those wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 69, please make your way to the dais and feel free to start when you're ready, Mr. Inglesby.
Good afternoon, Todd Inglesby, representing the Professional Firefighters of Nevada. I want to thank everybody for hearing this important legislation. I think the chief touched on it, but losing 18 members will gut the Pahrump Fire Department. That's 18 members of our brothers and sisters who will be losing their jobs. But it also puts all our other brothers and sisters who remain on the job at risk, trying to perform the duties that now they're missing 18 people who usually help perform those duties, respond to emergencies, respond to mothers, daughters, drownings, kids, all those things. So I think I want to stress that. It'll also put our members at risk that we work so closely with on our police side too as well. Between the two, that's almost 36 people who are sworn in to protect the people of Pahrump. And lastly, by not approving this bill, it will put the residents, the guests of Pahrump in dangerous situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Ryan Beeman, representing Clark County Firefighters. Just wanted to say thank you for the committee hearing this important bill. Also to the Assembly Member Hafen for taking numerous meetings with the firefighters to hear our concerns and working with us on this important piece of legislation. Pahrump's always had a piece of my heart. My family started there in the 60s, and I actually started as a public safety in the early 90s of my young career working for the Nye County Ambulance before there was actually even a paid department. So I got the experience out there, and I've seen the growth of Pahrump over the years. Just to answer one of the other questions, and the Clark County firefighters, the Clark County Fire Department that I work for, we do rely on our brothers from Pahrump. If you guys know where the Nye County line is in Clark County, it's a long responses out to that area still, and the town of Pahrump and our firefighters out there respond there all the way up to Trout Canyon and Highway 160. And not having those services and losing those members would definitely affect us, because our closest fire station for Clark County is at Blue Diamond and Rainbow. So you're talking a 50-mile trip out to that area. So I urge you to support this bill in the late name of Senator Mike McGinnis, who was the who worked the Senate taxation years ago, who was the sponsor of it, and support him. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. For the record, Tom Dunn, representing the Reno Firefighters Association, Local 731. I think it's, we are here in support of this bill. I also think it's important to recognize that not only does Nye County Sheriff's Office, but the Pahrump Fire Department also provides response services to the U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management in Nye County. So in those areas, and currently with the potential of budget impacts coming from the federal government, you're going to have a decrease in federal public safety response to Nye County. And also as an incident management professional, I was part of an incident management team that responded to a fire on Mount Charleston back in 2013, the Charleston 2 fire. And I can tell you that the Pahrump Fire Department and the Pahrump firefighters were part of that initial attack response to that specific fire. Even though it wasn't in their jurisdiction, they actually helped save and protect homes in that situation as well. So we are here in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will go down to Las Vegas to take testimony in support of Assembly Bill 69. Please feel free to start on whatever end.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for allowing us to speak on this. My name is Ron Boskovich, Boskovich, for the record, and I am the chairman of the Nye County Board of Commissioners. I've lived in Pahrump for 27 years, and I can promise you this, that the people of our community support our fire and police like none other. So I am a strong supporter of this. And again, I thank you for spending time with us.
My name is Ian Bain, I-A-N-B-A-Y-N-E. I'm a Commissioner in District 3. Madam Chair, members of the committee, also, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. If I could just say two things to possibly address some of the questions that may have not been answered fully. I ran, and I just took this seat, sure feels like a long time, but about a month ago, and I ran on not increasing the tax burden, but also on supporting our fire and police, which I'm very, very strongly in favor of. In fact, I'd probably say that I would only support a tax that at this time would go to those two organizations. The one thing that I do want to mention, and one of the members said it, as far as adequate safety for the community, my concern, and I came in trying to improve that above and beyond where we're at now. So I wasn't even aware of this sunset clause in this bill or this law. So for me, I'm trying to get us up to what I would consider adequate levels, both with the sheriff's deputies and with the fire department. And I've met with, I know a lot of these guys, and I've only known them a few months, but they're just really great guys who put a lot of time in and care so much. And so the one thing that they're always saying is they want more people, more support. We don't have a lot of backup, and I'm not a law enforcement officer, but I know we've had people in situations where there's been no support out there because there's just not enough people. So I'm trying to do what I can to find the funding for that. So this would be a tremendous step backwards for the community, and it would put the community at risk, I believe. Thank you very much.
CYRUS-HOJJATY. I am in support of this bill. Thank you. I'll yield my time.
Thank you so much. AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 69?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 69, please press star 9 on your phone or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. The last 3 digits, 293. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Oh, so sorry. Hello, my name is Carla Campos, and I am with CWA Local 9413, and we are in support of this bill.
Next caller.
Good afternoon, Chair Bacchus and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Evelyn Pacheco, EVELYN, Pacheco, PACHECO, and I am an Army veteran, and I'm also a member of the UA Local 525 Plumbers, Pipe Fitters, and HVAC. And I strongly urge the committee to support Assembly Bill 69. And thank you for your time.
Hi, good evening, Chairman Bacchus and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Clarence McCarthy, and I'm a union member of Brent's 709, Reno, Nevada, and I strongly urge the committee to support Assembly Bill 69. Thank you.
Chair, there are no more callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will next move to those wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 69. We'll start here in Carson City We don't have anyone here in Carson City. In Las Vegas, is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 69? Okay, we will go back to the phone lines. AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 69?
Testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 69, please press star 9 on your phone or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. Next, we will move to neutral testimony. We'll start with Carson City. Anyone wishing to give a neutral testimony to Assembly Bill 69? Thank you. We'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 69? AVH, do we have anybody else on the phone line wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 69?
To testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 69, please press star 9 on your phone or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue.
Caller, you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Joni Eastley, and I'm Vice Chair of the Tonopah Town Board. The Town of Tonopah wishes to testify neutral on AB 69. While we are generally supportive of the Nye County Sales and Use Tax Act of 2007, we have several areas of concern in the original bill, which we believe should be amended prior to passage. First, Section 4, subsection 5, A through C, requires the Board of County Commissioners to establish a program that promotes community participation in protecting the residents of the community that includes, without limitation, a written policy that includes a number of factors that must be considered and included in said policy. We have never seen this policy. Section 4, subsection 5C, requires the formation of partnerships with the residents of the community and public and private agencies and organizations to address mutual concerns related to the provision of public safety services. To our knowledge, these partnerships have never been formed. The language in the statute is silent as to whether these are formal or informal partnerships. Section 14, subsection 1A through C, states the revenue should be used to equip fire and law enforcement personnel, existing public safety facilities, and new public safety facilities. This appears to be in direct conflict with Section 17, subsection 3, which states the revenue is to be used, quote, for the support, end quote, of these services. As you know, equip and support have distinctly different definitions, and this has caused disagreements relative to how the funds have been used by law enforcement. Finally, Section 17, subsection 2, states the governing body, quote, must approve, end quote, the spending plan submitted to it if certain requirements are met. The town of Tonopah takes exception to this. We are the government closest to the people, and we work to address their concerns on a daily basis. There are allowable expenditures such as incentives, recruiting incentives, that would be an extremely useful tool for recruiting law enforcement officers to our underserved community. But our request for using some funds in this manner have been denied. And because senior command staff is located nearly 3 hours away in the southern part of the county, we believe it is in the best interest of the community to have a more active voice in how these funds are used, which could probably be done if those partnerships had been formed. We appreciate the opportunity to offer our testimony in this bill. We thank you for your consideration. And again, we are generally very much in support of the Sales and Use Tax Act, but believe that some amendments are appropriate.
And with that, Ms. Easton, we'll go ahead and mark your testimony actually in opposition because it seeks to change the bill's current language. Next, AVH, I don't know if we have anyone else wishing to give testimony in the neutral on the phone lines.
Caller, please, you may begin.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Joseph Graham. I'm a union member of CWA Local 9413. I strongly urge the committee to support Assembly Bill 69.
If you have just joined and would like to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 69, please press star 9 on your phone or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much, and we'll go ahead and mark Mr. Graham's testimony in support of Assembly Bill 69. With that, do the presenters have any closing comments that they would wish to make at this time?
Madam Chair, thank you again. Mark Fiorentino for the record. Just two things. First, back to where we started, we're very grateful for your time and your consideration of the bill, as you can see how important it is, as we said, to Nye County and the first responders and the residents. And second, I want to take just a little bit of responsibility. A lot of the testimony today was focused, obviously, on the population center of Pahrump, but to reiterate and respond to Mrs. Eastley's comments, we understand that this tax benefits the entire county, and including our partners out in the rural areas. And with that, we understand our continued obligation to work to make sure that the money is being spent in a way that serves all of those communities. As you can imagine, it's a relatively small amount of money that has to be spread pretty thin. And so there are going to be, from time to time, some disagreements on how to do that, but we understand our commitment to work with all of those communities. And we'll continue to do that if you guys see fit to process the bill. So thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, I will go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 69. And I want to move to our last item on the agenda, which would be public comment. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to give public comment this evening? In Las Vegas, is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give public comment this evening? We will go back to the phone lines. AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give public comment this evening?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 on your phone or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and close our meeting.